My family used me as their ATM for 23 years while worshiping my sister. But when I discovered they spent $50,000 of my money on her luxury Monaco trip, I exposed their entire betrayal, and it went viral worldwide. I'm 28 years old. I work in corporate consulting, making more in a month than my parents made in 6, and I basically just cut off the financial tap to my family after almost a decade of being their personal ATM. And yeah, I know how that sounds. Believe me, I do. But when you finish reading this, maybe you'll understand why I got to this point. I mean, it's not like I woke up one day and said, "That's it, it's over." It was more like the straw that broke the camel's back after 23 years of being invisible in my own family. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was 5 years old and my parents decided to have another child. I was an only child until that moment, and honestly, I don't remember much about what my life was like before Olivia was born, but what I do know is that everything changed the day she came home. My parents, especially my mom, became completely obsessed with her. And when I say obsessed, I'm not exaggerating. Like they went from being normal parents to becoming those parents who record every second of their baby's life and act like they invented parenting. At first, I thought it was normal, new baby and all that stuff. But as Olivia grew up, I realized it wasn't just the novelty. It was something deeper and permanent. By the time Olivia was like 3 years old, it was obvious that she was the star of the family and I was, I don't know, like the support staff. She had all the latest toys, brand name clothes, basically everything she asked for magically appeared, while I got the bare minimum and was told I should be grateful. My mom would spend hours playing with Olivia, reading her stories, taking her to ballet and gymnastics classes, and meanwhile, I was alone in my room doing homework or helping with household chores because apparently that was my role in the family. My dad wasn't much better. He was always recording Olivia's recitals or bragging about her achievements to anyone who would listen. But when I brought home good grades or won some award at school, I barely got a well done before they went back to talking about Olivia. Things got really bad when I was like 14 years old. My school organized an educational trip to Washington, D.C. that I had literally been waiting for since the year before. I had saved money from my meager allowance for months to be able to pay for it. I had all the permissions ready, everything. But it turns out the trip coincided with one of Olivia's gymnastics competitions in another state, and my parents decided that I couldn't go to Washington because they needed me to stay home to take care of the dog and help with household stuff while they went to support Olivia. I tried to reason with them. I told them they could leave the dog with the neighbors, that I had been planning this trip for a year, that it was important to me. But my mom just told me, "Ashley, don't be selfish. Your sister needs you. Family supports each other." I cried so much that night, and the worst part is that when they came back from Olivia's trip, they didn't even ask how I had been. They just talked about how Olivia had placed third and how proud they were of her. Things continued like this for years. Me being the responsible daughter who got good grades, helped at home, never caused problems, and Olivia being the princess who could do whatever she wanted without consequences. When I was 16, Olivia broke her wrist during a gymnastics practice, and that basically ended her athletic career, or what she called her career even though she was only 11 years old. And guess who got blamed for that? Yes, me. My mom said that if I had been there to support her instead of being at the library studying for my exams, Olivia wouldn't have felt so pressured and wouldn't have attempted that difficult move. Literally makes no logical sense. But that's how my family worked. Everything bad that happened was my fault somehow, and everything good was thanks to Olivia or my parents. When it came time to think about college, I was clear that I wanted to study business administration. I was always good with numbers, and I liked the idea of having my own business someday. I had worked hard throughout high school, had a GPA of almost 4, had done community service, everything you're supposed to do to get into a good university. And I did it. I was accepted to State University with a partial scholarship that covered like 60% of tuition, but I needed help with the rest plus housing and food and books and all that. So I went to my parents full of hope, thinking that finally they would see that I was worth it, that they were proud of me, that they would support me in this important step. I sat down with them in the living room and showed them my acceptance letter, explained about the scholarship, made them a detailed plan of how much I would need and how I could work part-time to help with expenses. And my dad literally looked at me and said, "Ashley, you're 18 years old now, you're an adult. It's time for you to learn to fend for yourself. We can't help you financially." I asked him why not. If they had always found money for Olivia's gymnastics classes, for her summer camps, for everything she wanted. My mom got upset and told me to stop comparing, that each daughter was different, and that they had decided that the best thing for me was to learn to be independent. Then my dad added that I could get a job at the mall or something and save for college, as if it were that easy to put together thousands of dollars working for minimum wage. I left that conversation feeling like I had been kicked in the stomach. I went straight to Taylor, my best friend since elementary school, and told her everything, crying in her living room. Taylor and her family had always been more like family to me than my own parents, honestly. Her parents, Brian and Rachel, owned a bakery in town and had always been super loving to me. They treated me like I was another daughter. That night, after I told them what had happened, Brian and Rachel made me an offer that literally changed my life. They told me they would pay for my entire college, everything, in exchange for me working at their bakery on weekends and summers, helping with the administrative and managerial part of the business, and that when I graduated and got a job, I would pay them back the money without interest. At my own pace, when I could. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was sitting there in their kitchen with an apple tea that Rachel had made me, trying to process that basically strangers, well, my best friend's family, but technically not my family, were willing to invest in me when my own parents wouldn't. I asked them like 5 times if they were sure, if they really wanted to do this. And Brian just told me, "Ashley, we've seen how you work, how hard you try. We know you're going to go far, and we want to be part of that. Plus, we need someone trustworthy to help us modernize the business, and you're perfect for that." I accepted, obviously, and we signed a simple contract that Rachel prepared so everything would be official and clear. College was probably the best time of my life up to that point. I was away from my family, I could focus on myself, I had friends who valued me, and I was learning things that really interested me. I worked at the bakery every weekend, drove like 2 hours each way, but I didn't care because Brian and Rachel treated me amazingly and the work was interesting. In fact, I ended up developing a whole online ordering system for the bakery and started managing their corporate catering business, which basically tripled their income in 2 years. They were super happy, and I was learning a ton about how to run a real business, not just theory from books. My parents never visited my dorm at college, not once in 4 years. They would call occasionally to ask how things were going, but they always ended up talking about Olivia, about how she was considering which university to choose with, their money, obviously, about how she had met a guy named Lucas who came from a very wealthy family. Basically, I was just an obligatory stop on their way to talking about their favorite daughter. And look, by that point, I had resigned myself to that being how things were. It didn't hurt as much as before. Or maybe I had just gotten better at ignoring the pain. I don't know. I graduated with honors, managed to pay back the full loan to Brian and Rachel in less than a year after graduating, thanks to landing an amazing job. And I was basically building the life I always wanted. I got the job in a kind of random way. Turns out in my senior year of college, I did a presentation at a student conference about growth strategies for small businesses, using Brian and Rachel's bakery as a case study. And a guy in the audience, Mr. Spencer, approached me afterwards and offered me an interview at his consulting firm. I thought it was too good to be true, but I went to the interview. Impressed enough, and they offered me a junior analyst position with a salary that was like 3 times what I had imagined earning fresh out of college. Everything was going well. Honestly, I was focused on my career, living in a decent apartment in the city, had an active social life, and had managed to establish a healthy emotional distance from my family. Until one day, like 6 months after I graduated, my mom called me with this sweet tone and said, "Ashley, honey, your dad and I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come to dinner this weekend?" And I, like an idiot, thought, oh, maybe they finally want to congratulate me on my job or something. So I went. Dinner was weird from the start. My parents were being super nice to me in a way that wasn't normal, asking about my work, my apartment, acting like they really cared. Olivia wasn't even there. Apparently, she had plans with Lucas. After dinner, we sat in the living room, and my mom started with the speech. She told me they were very proud of me, that they knew it had been difficult for me to pay for my college alone. The audacity to say that, as if they hadn't been the ones who forced me to do it. And that now that I was working and earning well, they wanted to ask me a favor. My dad pulled out some papers, and basically they explained that they needed financial help, that things had been difficult, that they had debts, and if I could help them with some monthly expenses. I asked them how much they needed, and they told me that with about $1,500 a month, they would be fine. $1,500 every month, for the family that never helped me with a single penny for my education. I should have told them no right there. I should have walked out of that house and never looked back. but I guess a part of me still wanted their approval. Still wanted to believe that maybe this could fix our relationship. So, I told them I would think about it, and a week later I gave them a supplementary credit card from my account with a limit of $1,500 monthly. I told them it was for emergencies and basic expenses, nothing more. Of course, they immediately started abusing it. The first month they spent exactly $1,500 on things that definitely weren't emergencies. When I complained, my mom got defensive and told me that a daughter who really loved her family wouldn't be watching every penny they spent. But I decided to let it go. You know, pick my battles and all that. For the next 2.5 years, I was basically giving them $1,500 monthly without fail, and they didn't even thank me half the time, like it was my obligation to support them. Meanwhile, my career was going great. I got promoted twice, was earning a 6-figure salary, had considerable savings, and had bought my own apartment. Mr. Spencer became something like a mentor to me, always pushing me to take on more challenging projects and defending me in executive meetings. My parents never asked about any of that. When we talked on the phone, which was like once a month, they only wanted to know if there was any problem with the credit card, or they told me about Olivia's achievements. Oh yeah, about Olivia. Turns out her relationship with Lucas was going super serious. He came from a millionaire family. His dad owned I don't know how many businesses, and basically Olivia had hit the jackpot according to my parents. Lucas had proposed to her like a year before, and they were planning a super elaborate wedding for the following summer. My parents wouldn't stop talking about it, about how Olivia was going to have the wedding of her dreams, about how Lucas's family was so important and wealthy, about how finally Olivia was going to have the life she deserved. I just nodded on the phone, trying not to throw up at how ridiculous it all was. One day, it was like a normal Tuesday, I was in my office reviewing some financial reports when I get a notification on my phone that my credit card had been charged $5,800. $5,800 in a single transaction when the limit was $1,500 monthly. I immediately called the bank, and they told me that my mom had called pretending to be me, had passed all the security verifications because obviously she knew all my information, and had requested a temporary increase in the credit limit for a medical emergency. A total lie, obviously, but the bank had already approved the charge. I was furious. I called my mom immediately and asked her what the hell had happened. She acted all casual and told me, "Oh yes, honey. It's just that we needed to make some payments for Olivia's engagement trip, and we thought you wouldn't mind helping." I told her that first, it wasn't a temporary limit, it was my credit card that I had given for emergencies. Second, that she had lied to the bank pretending to be me, which I'm pretty sure is illegal. And third, what the hell was this about an engagement trip? So she tells me that Lucas and Olivia were planning a 2-week trip to Monaco with their families to celebrate the engagement, and that of course my parents had to go because it was an important family event. I asked them if they were inviting me too, and there was an awkward silence before my mom said, "Well, Ashley, it's just that it's something intimate only for close families, and besides, you're so busy with your work." At that moment, I should have hung up and canceled the card, but I didn't. I swallowed the rage and told them I needed to know exactly what they were going to use my card money for. Over the next few weeks, I kept receiving charge notifications: flights, luxury hotels, expensive restaurants, excursions, yacht rentals. Literally, they were using my money to finance a luxury vacation in Monaco. And I wasn't even invited. I reviewed all the statements and calculated that between the initial transaction of $5,800 and all the subsequent charges, they were about to spend over $50,000 of my money on this trip. $50,000 that I had earned working my ass off, while they never lifted a finger to help me when I needed it. I tried to stay calm. I really did. I thought, okay, maybe after the trip I'll talk to them seriously and establish real boundaries. But then, like a week before they were supposed to leave for Monaco, Olivia called me. We hadn't talked in months. She never called me, so I knew something weird was going on. She greeted me all sweet and thanked me for being so generous with the trip, told me it was going to be amazing and that Lucas and his family were very excited. I didn't say anything, just listened. And then she continued. She said, "Ashley, I know you're probably a little resentful that we didn't invite you, but the truth is that you're not really part of this family in the same way we are. You're more like, I don't know, like some kind of benefactor or something. Someone who helps us when we need it, but who doesn't necessarily have to be at all the important family events. You I know what I mean? I stayed quiet for a moment because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her what she had said, and she repeated, with all the confidence in the world, that I was basically like a wallet to them, that my role in the family was to provide financial support because it was the only thing I was useful for, and that I shouldn't feel bad about not being part of the celebrations because I simply didn't fit with the image they wanted to project. She said image, like I was an embarrassing accessory that had to be hidden. And then she added, almost like thinking out loud, that she hoped that after the wedding, when she and Lucas had kids, I could continue helping financially because raising children was expensive. I hung up the phone without saying anything else. I sat in my apartment and cried. Cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not from sadness, but from pure rage. My whole life, I had been invisible to them unless they needed something from me. And now, my own sister. I was telling me straight to my face that to them, I was just a source of money. And you know what? Something broke in me at that moment. I was no longer the Ashley who sought approval, who put up with everything just to keep family peace. I realized that I didn't owe these people anything. Absolutely nothing. I spent that whole weekend planning. I reviewed every charge they had made on my card, compiled all the statements, saved screenshots of conversations, organized everything meticulously. Monday morning, I called the airline and using my name and the information from the card that had paid for the flights, I canceled all the reservations. Then I called the hotel in Monaco and did the same. I canceled the yacht rental, the restaurant reservations, the excursions, everything, every single thing. Everything that could be canceled, I canceled. And obviously there were penalties and cancellation fees, but I didn't care. I paid them gladly. Finally, I deactivated the credit card and reported, "It is compromised to the bank." That was a Tuesday. They had planned to fly that Friday. Thursday night, my phone started exploding with calls and messages from my mom, my dad, and Olivia. At first, I didn't answer. I let them sweat a little. When I finally answered, like at 10 at night, my mom was hysterical, screaming at me what had I done, that the airlines were telling them their reservations were canceled, that the hotel had no record of them, that we had ruined everything. I told her as calmly as I could that no, that she had ruined everything. When she decided to use my money without my permission for a vacation, I wasn't even invited to. My dad grabbed the phone and started yelling at me that I was a horrible daughter. How dare I sabotage them like this? That I owed my family respect. I responded that I could hardly call them family when my own sister had explicitly told me that I wasn't really part of it. Olivia also called, obviously, crying and saying that I had ruined her special trip, that Lucas and his family were going to think we were poor and pathetic, that I was a selfish bitch who couldn't let her have a happy moment. I told her it was funny. She was talking about selfishness, when she had spent 23 years being the center of my parents' universe, while I was treated like help. I hung up and blocked their numbers. What happened next was better than I could have imagined. Turns out Lucas and his family did go to Monaco as planned, and when my parents and Olivia got to the airport and couldn't fly, Olivia had a total meltdown. She called Lucas, crying, trying to explain what had happened, and apparently he asked her why they couldn't just buy new tickets if it was so important. Olivia ended up admitting they had no money because they had been using her sister's credit card to pay for everything. Lucas's parents apparently heard this conversation and started asking questions. Like, why had they pretended they could afford a trip like this if they didn't have the money? Why had they lied about their financial situation? Basically, Olivia was completely exposed. Lucas called her from Monaco a few days later and broke off the engagement. He said he couldn't marry someone who lied to him about such important things, and that his family wasn't comfortable with the situation either. Olivia obviously blamed me for everything. My parents, too. I received like 100 messages from my mom telling me I had ruined my sister's life, that because of me, Olivia had lost the love of her life, that I was a miserable and vindictive person who couldn't stand to see others happy. I didn't respond to any of them. But here comes the part that was probably my favorite of this whole situation. I decided to make the whole story public. I have a social media account that I use mainly for work stuff, but where I also have like 2,000 followers from my college days and the industry. I wrote everything. Absolutely everything. From my childhood being the invisible daughter to the Monaco trip. I included screenshots of the statements showing the over $50,000 they had spent of my money. Screenshots of conversations with Olivia where she told me I wasn't really family. Everything. I ended the post saying I was sharing it as a warning for other people who might be in similar situations of family financial, and emotional abuse, and that no one should feel guilty for setting boundaries with toxic family no matter what others say. The post went viral. Seriously? It had like 50,000 shares in 2 days, appeared on news pages and blogs. People were sending me messages of support everywhere. Some said I had been too harsh, that family is family, and I should forgive. But most of the comments were from people who had gone through similar situations and who thanked me for speaking openly about something so difficult. Several media outlets wanted to interview me, but I declined all offers. I had already said what I needed to say. My parents obviously saw it. Everyone in our town saw it. They started receiving judgment from friends and acquaintances. People confronted them at the supermarket, asking if it was true they had treated their eldest daughter like that. Some even stopped talking to them. Olivia had to close all her social media accounts because people were harassing her and calling her a parasite and spoiled. I know this sounds kind of vindictive, and maybe it was a little, but honestly, at that moment, I didn't care. I felt like I had finally taken control of my narrative after years of being silenced. Like a month after all this, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. The doorman called me and told me there were some people who said they were my parents asking to come up. I told him not to let them pass, but asked him to let me know when they left. I went down like an hour later when they were already gone, and the doorman gave me a letter they had left. I opened it in my apartment. It was a long letter from my mom, saying she regretted everything that had happened, that they realized now that they had treated me badly, that they wanted to fix things, that please give them a chance to make it up to me. But then, in the last paragraph, she mentioned that Olivia was going through a very difficult time with the Lucas thing and that she needed support from her sister. And right there, I knew nothing had changed. Even in her supposed apology, it was still about Olivia and what she needed. I didn't respond to the letter. I changed my cell phone number and only gave the new one to the people who really mattered to me, which turned out to be like 10 people, including Taylor and her family, some friends from college, and my mentor, Mr. Spencer. I blocked my parents and Olivia on absolutely everything. Email, social media. I even gave instructions to the doorman of my building not to let them up no matter what excuse they gave. Basically, I cut them completely out of my life. 6 months later, I still haven't talked to them. Taylor tells me occasionally that my mom has contacted her asking about me, trying to get information about how I am, where I work, if I have a partner, anything. Taylor tells them she doesn't know anything, that she respects my decision to keep my distance. I also learned from her that Olivia is now working at a retail store because, after all, she never went to college and didn't have any real skills outside of being my parents' favorite, and that my parents are having serious financial problems because it turns out those $1,500 a month I was giving them had been their main source of extra income, and without it, they can't maintain their income. Lifestyle. A small part of me feels guilty when I hear that, but then I remember everything they did to me, and the guilt disappears. My life now is, I don't know, finally mine. Sounds super cliche, but it's true. I just received another promotion at work. I'm now director of strategic consulting and earning more than I ever imagined possible. I bought a new car. I'm planning a trip to Europe next summer. I'm dating someone who treats me with the respect I deserve. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel that constant weight of never being enough. Brian and Rachel invited me to their house for Christmas this year, and I happily accepted. They're more family to me than the people who share my blood. Do I regret what I did? No. Was it extreme? Maybe. Would my parents and Olivia ever be part of my life again? Honestly, I don't know. Probably not. There are people who say family is forever, that you should forgive no matter what, but I believe that no one has the right to mistreat you just because they share your DNA. I spent 23 years trying to earn the love and approval of people who never saw me as anything more than a convenient tool, and I finally realized that I can't force anyone to value me if they don't want to. Last week, I was in my office, reviewing some contracts when Mr. Spencer came in and told me, "Ashley, I just wanted to tell you I'm proud of you. Not just for your work, but for how you've handled your whole family situation. It takes guts to set those boundaries." And you know what? Those few words meant more to me than anything my parents have ever said to me in years. Because they came from someone who genuinely respects and values me for who I am, not for what I can give them. So, yeah, that's my story. The story of how I went from being the invisible daughter and my family's ATM to finally reclaiming my life and my self-worth. It's not a perfect fairy tale ending. There are still days when it hurts to think about everything I lost and the family I never really had. But at least now I'm building a life surrounded by people who really love me. And that, I guess, is enough.